Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Lucky Money. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing a new series. I wanted to talk about each of the 9 classes in TF2, unscripted basically, and just kind of go over my thoughts about all of them, whether it's how they play, their design, their character, whatever I want to talk about. I just wanted to talk about all 9 classes, and I figured I would go from my least favorite to my favorite, which unfortunately means we are starting off with the Heavy today. Now, I don't hate the Heavy, I don't hate any of the classes in TF2, but, I mean, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, Heavy he's my least played class in the game, and he's also, I feel like, the class that I feel like he's also the class where I never have a lot of fun playing as the Heavy, and with the gameplay you're seeing here, you'll probably pick up on why. It almost feels unfair, I think, having Heavy as my least favorite. I feel like he's the class, just in general, he's gotten the least love from Valve, I feel like. And these are points that have already been talked to death. I feel like Heavy doesn't really have any other play styles, and whatnot. He's just sort of like, you have a minigun, you have a shotgun, and sometimes you got a sandwich, and that's about it. And with the way TF2 plays, especially now, TF2's a lot... The way TF2 plays now is completely different than how it was when the game came out. And I feel like Heavy just doesn't really... He hasn't really evolved to keep up with the game of TF2. Like, you have the Engineer, who originally couldn't pick up buildings, but then he was given the ability to in an update, and that made the Engineer play a lot faster. The Pyro was given the Air Blast, allowing him to play a lot more aggressively. It's like each class... Whether it's, like, updates to the class itself or, through item drops and whatnot, each class has gotten upgrades. I don't like to say upgrade sounds weird, but, I mean, that's probably the best word for it, I'd say. And Heavy never really has gotten much of that, and if he has, it's always super limited. You know, it's like, and I think I've made this complaint in a video, but the gloves of running urgently, right? That is, I think, probably the best mobility tool you can equip on the Heavy. And even then, I never use it because it just drains your HP. And it's like, what? You only get a small speed boost from that? And then you get such a negative downside. And then you have classes like the Scout where they're like, oh, the Scout can jump, he can double jump, but what if he could jump 5 times? And the Soda Popper exists, and that's a good weapon. It's a good weapon, and it's fun to use. But it seems as though Valve thinks the Heavy is so overpowered that I feel like whenever they give the Heavy any buffs, they feel the need to nerf him a ton. And, like, here's the thing, right? Heavies are not hard to take out, right? You can probably see in these clips here. Now, I don't main Heavy. I don't play a lot of Heavy. But I'm dying a lot as Heavy. And it's mainly because either, A, I get headshot, which, like, normally when I'm not in combat, I can manage that pretty well. I'm good at moving around and stuff. But once you're actually shooting your gun, it gets a lot harder to avoid headshots because it's like, well, okay, well, I'm focusing on something right now. And good Heavy players are probably always thinking about that. You know, staying out of sight lines or staying out of the sight line of snipers and whatnot. And then you also have the issue of spies where, yeah, you always have to be looking for them. And that's just something I feel like people who play a lot of Heavy, they tend to do a lot more. But I feel like when I'm playing Heavy, it's like, I don't know. And again, this could just be, I don't play a lot of Heavy, but it's a learning curve that I don't want to get over, you know, because it's not very fun. And I think that's the thing about Heavy that I think about the most, is that it's like, a lot of people will say, oh, well, Heavy's not so bad, you know, you have options available to you, you just have to experiment a bit, this and that, and blah, blah, blah. But I shouldn't have, in my opinion, I shouldn't have to experiment this much with a class to have fun with that class. You know, I should just be able to, I pick up the Scout, I'm like, oh, sweet, I run fast, I got a double jump, I know how I can use this well. Soldier, you know, you have rocket jumping, and granted, you have to take time to learn how to rocket jump, but that's something that's, I feel like it's a bit different because it's such a drastic change for Soldier. You know, it's not like, you know, oh, I have a learning curve. Like, the learning curve for Heavy is just not dying instantly, right? knowing how not to get headshot, knowing how you shouldn't get backstabbed, or you should be at least aware of that. But, like, I don't think that's a fun learning curve. That's just sort of my thought on it. Whereas learning to rocket jump or, learning different mechanics with other classes and stuff, I find those to be a lot more fun, So I'm not against the idea of, like, learning curves in general. I might have sort of given off that impression. It's just I don't think heavies are fun. I also think as well, heavy is a class that relies very heavily on teamwork. You can't really go at it alone as a heavy, and you're kind of just a sitting duck. At least with classes like Spy and stuff, if you get into a tricky situation, you can get out of that situation, and whatnot. If you're playing as a sniper, and you're in a tricky situation, well, it's probably your fault since you were never supposed to be in a situation to begin with in most cases. Like, I feel like each class has, their limitations, and, like, they have sort of... Each class sort of has things they shouldn't do, but I feel like heavies is just sort of, like, you can't go at it alone as heavy, but also with how TF2 plays, you can't really guarantee you're going to have your team with you. You can't really having TF2, you're not going to have an organized push, where you are the tank and everyone's kind of like trying to attack, but you're also getting health and you have other people flanking. Like, teamwork is an illusion, however you want to say it. And I feel like that does affect heavy a little bit. I feel like people are drawn to the heavy. If there is any teamwork in TF2, I feel like it's centered around the heavy. You're going to have medics that just installed the game that are going to pocket you and whatnot. But I feel like it's just, like, it's always a little rough because it's just, like, I feel like when I do die, I feel like it's because my whole team retreated or something, Like, we're doing good, we're pushing, but then everyone retreats, and I'm still sitting there with my minigun, and then I die to something. Or... sometimes, and you'll see this a lot in my footage, I position myself horribly, like, all the time, which is just something I like to do, it's just something I do all the time, because that's just how I play TF2, and granted, I'm used to classes where you do go out of position. I play a lot of Spy, I play a lot of Scout, and whatnot, so sometimes that little, that's just how I prefer to play, so sometimes I feel like that sort of mindset seeps into other classes, and whatnot, but... I've been talking a lot of negative about Heavy. I should also talk a few positives about him as well. And I'll start with this, and I'll say this. This is not really gameplay-oriented, but I really like the Heavy as TF2's mascot. And I feel like for the character archetype that the Heavy is, he's one of the only fictional characters. Like, usually each game will have the big, strong tank that's kind of dumb and whatnot. And that's like my least favorite character archetype ever. But I don't hate that with the Heavy. So I'm going to give Valve that. Thanks, Valve. I don't like playing Heavy. I do have fun with him sometimes, though. And, like, sometimes when things are going well as Heavy, it does feel very powering. You'll see a few points in this video where I go on, like, massive kill streaks. Not massive, I get, like, 4 or 5 people in a short succession. But, like, it's something where it's, like, when you are... When everything is positioned right for you, when you're in position, all the enemies are, like, perfectly lined up for you and whatnot, it can be fun to play as Heavy. I will be honest, it's not the most riveting gameplay. Like, once you do it for a bit, like, you have a dopamine rush the first, like, you go into a match, kill 6 people, and you're like, sweet, awesome, that was fun. Then if you do it again and whatnot, like, keep doing that, keep getting kill streaks, it's just not as fun. You're not really doing anything different. You're not playing the game in an interesting way and whatnot. But, yeah, I feel like that's just the thing. I feel like Heavy could be really fun. He has the potential for it. Unfortunately, we're never going to see that. TF2's support is done at this point. But that's where I stand with Heavy. I think he's got potential, but I also think he's just been left behind. He's the one class that's just... He's like his, I don't know. He hasn't really received much. And whenever he does receive anything from Valve, it's usually, like, nerfed into the ground. It's like, oh, you want to heal as Heavy? Well, you don't get a secondary. And it's also, like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like, it gets weird for Heavy because it's like his best secondary is the sandwich. and everyone will just have the sandwich, and no one will have anything else. You know, it's like there's not a lot of experimentation when it comes to heavy, because I feel like he's just so locked down with what's considered good and what is useful, and there aren't many fun options to play around with heavy. And like I said, I know there are people out there who are heavy mains that play a lot of heavy, that really make it their own, that have found fun ways to play as heavy. I just don't think it's worth it to get to that point. You know, I'd much rather just choose a class that is more interesting on the surface than one where you really have to dig deep to find something, I guess. If that makes any sense, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here. And the way I think about TF2 is probably going to be completely different to how you think about it and whatnot. But that's about all I had on heavy. So yeah, thanks all so much for watching. I hope to see you all in the next video, and have a great day.